All right, there are two very time-relevant things that we need to talk about this week, and on today's show, they intersect. Myles Garrett, 49ers trade interest. Some more information for you. We're going to go over all of it during today's show. But Myles Garrett, he's been talked about by the 49ers, and he's talked about the 49ers in the not-so-distant past. And one of the 49ers that he's talked about is Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey launched the running back revolution that is about to hit yet another peak in the Super Bowl on Sunday. Radio Row, everything is roaring at the Super Bowl. A year ago at this time, we were in Vegas. This year, the festivities are happening in New Orleans. But it's going to be Saquon Barkley in this Super Bowl, who has transformed the Philadelphia offense. He is the embodiment of the running back renaissance as far as the NFC champions go. And I think that renaissance, that revolution can be traced all the way back to Christian McCaffrey, who in that 2022 season, like Saquon Barkley before this 2024 season, moved from a bottom feeder, it was the Carolina Panthers for CMC, to a team that needed a boost. That was the 49ers. The 49ers got the boost. The 49ers went all the way to the Super Bowl by the next season. They obviously didn't win the Super Bowl against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, but the running back revolution definitely took hold. Running backs absolutely matter. The days of running back interchangeability is over. It just so happens that last year, before the 49ers played the Browns, maybe a little bit after, I don't know exactly when Myles Garrett said this, but Myles Garrett did say this about Christian McCaffrey. And this tells me that Myles Garrett gets it. Full quote, I'll read it right now. Mike made this great graphic, though. Somebody asked Myles Garrett about who he thinks the best player in the NFL is. Myles thought about it. He smiled. And he said, take myself out of the equation. I'd say C-Mac. Breaks through tackles. He runs hard every single time. Couldn't really stop the guy. I mean, running the ball, receiving the ball, the guy can throw as well. He has dedicated himself to each facet of the game, making sure he's as valuable to his team as possible. He is a renaissance man. The second to last word there. Myles Garrett was ahead of his time. Myles Garrett gets it. Myles Garrett said Christian McCaffrey's a renaissance man. Well, it is fitting that the player that Myles Garrett called the renaissance man has started the running back renaissance. It hadn't just been Christian McCaffrey, but he was the first to change teams and supercharge a new team in an era where analysts and fans said that running backs didn't really matter, that they're interchangeable. If they're interchangeable, then the star running backs would not completely transform the fortunes of their new teams. But Christian McCaffrey did it for the 49ers in 2022. We talk about Saquon Barkley suiting up for the Eagles in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs on Sunday. We can talk about Derrick Henry moving over from the Tennessee Titans to the Baltimore Ravens, helping take their offense to another level. Then we can go to some other running backs who were successful this year who didn't make quite as big of a splash, but Joe Mixon, moving from Cincinnati to Houston, had a lot of success. J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards both went from Baltimore to the Chargers and helped turn the L.A. Chargers' fortunes around, playing for the other Harbaugh brother. I mean, up and down the league, you have these great examples of the running back renaissance. And unfortunately for the 49ers, and I think it was ironic, Christian McCaffrey had to watch the vast majority of the running back renaissance from the sideline. But this is what I wrote about up on the San Francisco Standard. Our 8-part series is continuing to build. This was part 3, came out today. State of the 49ers. McCaffrey will take back his turf, but the draft could produce a successor. And we also have to talk about Jordan Mason. Will the 49ers keep him? Are they going to tender him at the second round level? He's going to be a restricted free agent. First round level, that's over $7 million. Right? A first refusal tender, somebody may come and pick up Jordan Mason. Because, we talk about how well somebody like Derrick Henry ran the ball this year. Take a look at this. This right here makes Jordan Mason look really good. There's going to be true value in the market for Jordan Mason, and that market definitely will include interest from the 49ers. They're going to have final say on things because he is a restricted free agent, but other teams may want to drive the price up. This graph right here on the x-axis, you've got rushing yards over expectation per attempt. So rushing efficiency on a per back basis is on the X. Further to the right is better. And then on the Y-axis, you have how often any particular back faces a stacked box with 8 or more defenders. So we're talking about Saquon Barkley. He's way over here. Yes, great rushing yards over expectation. Looks like the highest number in the league, either that or number 2. Derrick Henry and Saquon look about tied at about 1.5 yards over expectation per carry. But Saquon's not running through nearly as many 8+ man boxes. The more crowded the boxes, the higher up the dot for the running back. Well, Jordan Mason was running into crowded boxes more often than anyone in the league, and his rushing yards over expectation was near Derrick Henry's. If you can find a spot near Derrick Henry on a running back chart, you're probably doing well. So credit to Jordan Mason. He took up the torch in the year of the running back, although when we look at the full performance of the position, he did not do what Christian McCaffrey was able to do for the 49ers last year in terms of volume and in terms of the receiving game. This is 49ers running back efficiency last season. I think I could actually make this one take over the full screen for you guys. There you go. Running back efficiency last year. You've got yards after contact per attempt. Mason, similar number to Christian McCaffrey, 2023. And then you've got McCaffrey, obviously over 50 carries. He wasn't at 100% for most of them. Below average this year. That's why it's in the red for McCaffrey. But Guerendo and Mason both ran the football well. Then when we moved to how the 49ers received the football out of the backfield, that's where Mason did not have nearly the productivity. Blue is above average. Red is below average. This is yards per route run for 49ers running backs. McCaffrey, despite the fact that he really wasn't his old self up until the moment he got re-injured against Buffalo, still at the top of that heap for the 49ers. Mason, Patrick Taylor, not nearly as efficient in the receiving game. Anyway, all of this is up on the San Francisco Standard. I'm tossing it over to Mike. It is in the description. You can check it out, and we can go from there as we talk about the running back renaissance, which Myles Garrett figured out ahead of time. So we could talk a little bit more about that. The Browns are going to dig in for at least the foreseeable future. There is debate about whether or not the Browns should dig in. I think they'd be crazy to dig in for too long in this situation because to me, it's patently obvious that the Cleveland Browns are not going to be a Super Bowl contender at any point of the next couple of years. They whiffed on their quarterback. They whiffed on Deshaun Watson. Tough luck. Even worse, and this is negligence on top of luck, is the fact that they paid him $230 million fully guaranteed. There's never been a contract close to that big in the NFL. Yet the Browns gave it to him. And, you know, you could look at other teams in the Eastern time zone, like the Philadelphia Eagles, who are about to play in the Super Bowl, who have also spent a ton of money at a bunch of different positions. But the Eagles have actually gotten ROI on most positions, including their most important one, quarterback. No matter what you say about Jalen Hurts, he's a whole hell of a lot better than Deshaun Watson. The Browns, well, they haven't gotten anything out of Deshaun Watson except for 2 torn Achilles. And that means that they're in salary cap hell. That means they're not going to sniff a Super Bowl anytime soon. And that means that one of the best players in the entire league, Myles Garrett, is saying, I want out. So he gets it when we talk about Christian McCaffrey. The quote about McCaffrey from Garrett was awesome, calling him a renaissance man. But Myles Garrett also gets it when he is talking about teams who are contending and teams who aren't. And it's very clear that the Cleveland Browns are not set up to be in contention. I saw something today saying the Browns might think that they're one QB with a pulse away from being a contender. Well, A, it's really hard to get a quarterback that's good enough to move the needle toward contention. You just can't get any guy. The Browns had the number 18 defense in the entire league by EPA last year. This wasn't like, I could see the New York Jets leaving the 2022 season heading into 2023, or 2023 heading into 2024, either one, really. They had a top 5 defense in both of the previous seasons, but they didn't have a quarterback, right? Because Aaron Rodgers was either still on the Packers or he was hurt. I could see, and I talked to Robert Saleh at the owners' meetings a couple of years ago. Just ran into him in the hallway. We were talking for a bit, and he was just saying, we just got to get our quarterback in the building, and we'll be good. That was Aaron Rodgers, obviously, right? And as soon as we got Aaron Rodgers in the building, then things are going to be totally fine because our defense is playing really good football. This was before Aaron Rodgers tore his Achilles and everything went downhill from there. But I could see the Jets rightfully considering themselves a QB away from being in a really good spot over the past couple of years because their defense was already a top 5 defense. I can't put the Browns into that category because they were the number 18 defense in the entire NFL last year. They were the very worst offense. Deshaun Watson was horrific, and then he tore his Achilles, but they were the number 18 below average defense. So, yes, it is a semi-pricey roster. Yes, they have invested a lot in guys. Yes, they have restructured contracts like the one for Myles Garrett, but you can't convince me that the Browns have been restructuring contracts solely because they think that they're in some kind of contention. They've been restructuring contracts because they screwed themselves with the worst contract in NFL history for Deshaun Watson. If I'm the Browns, if I'm their GM, Kevin Costner, out of Mount Whitney High School in Visalia, if I'm the Browns, then I decide to end the charade now. I realize that Myles Garrett, my best player, has called us out on it. End the charade now, begin picking up draft capital for the future, even if it comes at an extremely expensive price. I want to show you the Myles Garrett contract one more time. We talked about this yesterday. There are actually a couple of complicating mechanisms in the contract, and they involve dates that we should keep an eye out on over the course of this offseason. As Diana Rossini of The Athletic said yesterday, this is likely to be a long and drawn out, windy road because the Browns are going to dig in. They're going to begin by saying that they don't want to trade Myles Garrett. We'll see if that stance of Cleveland's changes over the course of the offseason. But assuming that stance does change, then we're going to be dealing with a set of rules that we can actually take a look at on Over the Cap, a website that does a really good job of the finances and taking a look at different trigger dates in the contract. So for the Browns, the reason why trading Myles Garrett is not initially appetizing is because they have restructured his contract to the point where the proration money is in this column that I'm outlining with my cursor. It's in prorated signing bonus and other bonus money. So they've pushed money into the future as far as cap hit goes to try to keep Garrett's cap hit as low as possible for themselves in the near term. So, for example, he's at a $19.7 million salary cap hit for the Browns in this 2025 cycle. If he is traded, and this is going to be true for the Browns too, because you're going to see there are multiple different pay mechanisms that Myles Garrett has as part of this deal. But if he is traded, then the Browns will continue to carry all of the dead money, all the prorated money in the future will become dead money. So everything in these columns has been paid out to Garrett, but must still hit the salary cap. That will accelerate to hit the cap at once. And that means that a trade before June 1st would cost the Browns $36.2 million in dead money. It would actually be $16.5 million more expensive to trade or cut Myles Garrett than it would be to keep him, just because they've staved off all of this future money that would rush and hit their salary cap all at once if they were to trade him. So they would have to actually restructure his deal to make a trade more financially feasible in the near term. But what I want to talk about is the impact of Myles Garrett's contract on a potential acquiring team's salary cap. And this is where it gets a little bit more complicated. They've reduced his base salary to the league minimum. There you have 1.255 million in 2025, 1.3 million in 2026. Okay, great. An acquiring team would not be responsible for any of the prorated signing bonus money. But it's a little bit more complicated here because I don't think Over the Cap has this broken up into quite enough detail. There is other bonus money that an acquiring team would be responsible for. On the 5th day of the new league year, in each of the next 2 seasons, 2025 and 2026, Myles Garrett is owed a $5 million roster bonus. Okay, so that's not guaranteed, but unless you're planning to cut Myles Garrett, then you're going to pay it. That's part of his contract right now. So the new league year starts on March 12th. Right now, it is February 4th. So in just about 5 weeks, on the 5th day, so in about 6 weeks, 5 days past March 12th, on March 17th, St. Patrick's Day, Myles Garrett is going to be owed an extra $5 million. That's inflection point number 1. Then there is inflection point number 2. Inflection point number 2, you could hover over here over the 2025 note on his contract, and it says that on September 1st, which is right after training camp, Myles Garrett has a $13.4 million option bonus due. Now, again, it's not guaranteed, but unless you're planning to cut Myles Garrett, you're going to have to pay him that money. I don't think anybody's planning to cut Myles Garrett. So he's due to earn $13.4 million on September 1st, and he's due to earn $5 million in roster bonus on March 17th. Those are 2 dates about 6 months apart in which more money is set to come Myles Garrett's way. It's important to note that that option bonus all comes at once. It's not listed in base salary. His base salary, which is paid on a weekly basis during the course of the regular season, is the league minimum, $1.255 million. So if a player's traded halfway through the season and he's got a $10 million base salary, they're paid by the week, that means the team picking him up has to inherit $5 million or so of his base salary. But if a player has a $10 million option bonus that kicks in on September 1st, even if he's traded halfway through the season, the team that he was on when the option bonus kicked in is going to be responsible for the entire option bonus. So this option bonus right here for Myles Garrett on September 1st, $13.4 million, is a true inflection point in this contract. That's a lot of money that the Browns would have to swallow if Garrett were still on their roster, but they're planning to trade him at some point during the season. So if the Browns do want to trade Garrett at all, if they come around to that conclusion, I think it would be wise of them to trade him before September 1st so they're not on the hook for the $13.4 million option bonus. Now, on a smaller scale, the March 17th date, the $5 million roster bonus is also worth talking about. And I talked a little bit about that yesterday, but I don't think that I went deep into the specific date. Like I said, 5th day of the new league year. So all of this stuff is going to start heating up in about a month. We can talk about Brock Purdy's contract, I think, in a little bit more detail in a month. We can start talking about who the 49ers might keep, who they might sign, who they might trade in a little bit more detail in a month. And we can obviously talk about Myles Garrett a little bit more in a month, because the NFL bases its salary cap on league revenue. So how much money does NFL make in any annual cycle? Well, that's going to determine what the salary cap is. The annual cycle is not yet finished. The Super Bowl is going to be played on Sunday. As soon as the Super Bowl is done, the NFL is going to be able to sit back and tally how much money it made throughout the 2024 season. As soon as that happens, the NFL is going to be able to announce what the exact 2025 salary cap will be. So then when we have the exact 2025 salary cap, then all the teams will have enough knowledge to begin confidently making decisions that are high-stakes decisions with money. So the 49ers and Brock Purdy probably going to need the size of the salary cap. You're probably going to need that knowledge to make a good decision moving forward. I think the Browns with Myles Garrett sitting on these two trigger points, a $5 million roster bonus that is coming in on March 17th, and then the $13.4 million option bonus that's set to come in on September 1st. I think that the Browns could more intelligently navigate both of those two trigger points if they know exactly what the 2025 salary cap is going to be. So that's why it incentivizes the Browns to just dig in right now. This is holding pattern time regardless. It's February 4th. We don't know the 2025 cap yet. Free agency isn't here yet. The NFL draft is still months away. I think any rational approach to this situation, if you're the team, which just got rejected verbally or in writing, I guess, by Myles Garrett, is to say, no, we're not going to honor that trade request. He is still under contract with our football team for 2 more years. You stand pat if you're the Browns. That doesn't mean that this is the best decision for them to make. And I will continue to contend, unless something materially changes for Cleveland, that trading Myles Garrett is the best path forward. You don't want to subscribe to sunk cost fallacy in business. Sunk cost fallacy means if something has already gone bad, don't hang on to it just because you've invested a lot in it. Sometimes the fire sale is your best path forward. You have to let go of the past and focus on the future. I think the minute that the Browns gave Deshaun Watson the contract that they did, and then Deshaun Watson proceeded to stink up the joint. I mean, he was terrible. Absolutely terrible. The moment that happened, the Cleveland Browns need to realize that their days with this particular group of players are done. Like, this team, the defense is eroded at this point. It's not a top 5 defense. There isn't quarterback help coming through that door that can help turn the Cleveland Browns around in the way that they need to be turned around. So it's simple for me. Cleveland needs to realize what's best for them sooner rather than later. I think Myles Garrett calculated that Cleveland would realize that when he put out this trade request. Maybe he thought that his words would push the Browns ownership and management to realize that. Or, maybe he's just not operating in good faith. Maybe he just wants a big time pay raise. So he's threatening to want to leave to get it. But I don't think that would be the best way to handle it. I think that Myles Garrett is serious about wanting to play for a Super Bowl contender and serious about thinking that Cleveland does not qualify for that. Otherwise, he wouldn't be posting something of that sorts on Twitter on February 3rd. Otherwise, he would wait a little bit longer and not do it in such a publicly embarrassing fashion for the Cleveland Browns. Anyway, Garrett does get it, though, when it comes to his 49ers knowledge. When he called Christian McCaffrey the best player in football, outside of himself, mind you, when that happened, we also saw Myles Garrett call Christian McCaffrey a Renaissance man. The Renaissance man who started the running back renaissance, which just so happens to be what we got to write about up on the San Francisco Standard to begin this beautiful Tuesday. Isn't it awesome how everything kind of ties together? I almost think it's meant to be. 49ers and Myles Garrett. 49ers are the 5th highest odds right now to pick up Myles Garrett if he is traded. There's that big domino that has to happen. Kind of annoying. I get it that the Cleveland Browns need to want to trade Myles Garrett. But if it does happen, you would think that as far away as possible in the NFC is where it would happen. I laid out the financial commitment, the financial burden that a new team would have to shoulder for Myles Garrett. There also is some disagreement in the football analysis community regarding whether or not a new team would have to give Myles Garrett a new contract. I view it, and maybe this is simplistic of me, I view it this way. If you're Myles Garrett, you're under contract with the Browns for 2 more years. You're demanding that you go somewhere to win a Super Bowl. The Browns obviously aren't getting it done because they're giving out massive guaranteed contracts to players who don't deserve them, and they're in salary cap hell. Say that you act like some of these bloggers are saying that you're going to act, and you get traded or a trade is facilitated, but then you say you want a market-setting contract on top of that. That's kind of a pick your lane situation. I think in this situation, you're already under contract with a bad team. I don't know if it's feasible for Myles Garrett to go out, demand going to a new team, and demand a new contract. Maybe demand a new contract or demand a new team. But you can't have both, because there's a reason that some of these other teams have much better prospects of going to and winning a Super Bowl. And it's because they're financially more savvy than the team that you're currently on, the Cleveland Browns. Now, I get it. I'm putting words into Myles Garrett's mouth right now for hypothetical reasons. He hasn't said that he wants a new contract. I took his trade demand yesterday to indicate that he would rather shoot for a Super Bowl, and if that meant playing on his current deal for one more season before his lame duck year, he's got 2 more left on his deal, he'd do it. Now, there could also be minor adjustments made to the contract, something that it's more performative than anything, right? That doesn't affect the potential new team salary cap situation. All of that is possible. This is all complicated stuff, but it seems to me that Myles Garrett is willing to do what it takes on his end to make this smooth. The question moving forward is, are the Cleveland Browns willing to do what it takes on their end to make this smooth? Remember that in week 6 of the 2023 season, the 49ers played the Cleveland Browns. And before they played the Browns, Trent Williams talked about Myles Garrett. This is one of the more fascinating answers that you'll hear from a future Hall of Famer at the offensive line, talking about a future Hall of Famer at edge rusher.
Against a guy that good, or
yeah, I mean, of course, this is like, just telling, just saying, like, it was more like for me, it's like one of those old DeMarcus Ware matchups where I'm a young stud and he's a Hall of Fame player, and he opening night, I lost some sleep on that one, but yeah, it kind of reminds me of one of those, because he, DeMarcus was one of those guys that didn't have a weakness, and one of those guys that literally could embarrass you in multiple ways. So for me, it kind of goes back to those days with we talk about '95.
Do you ever lose any sleep anymore over a matchup? Or?
Yeah, of course. I mean, yeah, I'm be up in my bed thinking about it all night. I was up last night thinking about it. So, yeah, I guess you could say I do lose sleep.
I think Trent Williams would sleep better if Myles Garrett was on his team. Wouldn't have to ever face him. And then also would have the benefit of getting to watch Myles Garrett from the sideline. Myles Garrett could help the 49ers insulate their lead, preserve leads, make life easier for Trent Williams, who's scheduled to be back and healthy for the 49ers next year. Got a quick update. 49ers Director of Scouting and Football Operations, Josh Williams, has been requested to interview for the Jaguars GM job. That's according to a source from Ian Rappaport. Remember that the assistant GM in Jacksonville right now is Ethan Waugh. Ethan Waugh, who worked with Josh Williams in San Francisco. Josh Williams has been with the 49ers for 14 seasons. Came aboard in 2011. That was the year that Jim Harbaugh took over as head coach. So Williams has lasted through several coaching regimes in San Francisco's scouting department and front office. And I think that the Jags probably got word through Ethan Waugh, maybe even through Trent Baalke, who they fired recently. But Baalke overlapped with Josh Williams. So the 49ers might lose a personnel guy who's been a really, really good personnel guy for them over 14 years to Jacksonville. He's been requested to interview for that job. So we'll keep our eyes on that. You guys should all keep your eyes on the state of the 49ers, the running backs edition, which we came through with today on the San Francisco Standard. There it is. These are beautiful, beautiful illustrations. If you like the illustration, hit the like button. Clay Roddery has been doing our illustrations for the entire state of the 49ers series. We can go here and we can see all 3 of them. McCaffrey, Kyle Juszczyk, Nick Bosa. I love that one. And then the offensive line in front of Brock Purdy. We're going to have an 8-part series covering all this stuff. And then maybe when it's done, we're going to get an illustration of Myles Garrett in a 49ers uniform. You know, we talked about the other 95 yesterday. Garrett wears 95 for the Browns. Drake Jackson wears 95 for the 49ers, although he did not don that jersey this year, recovering from knee surgery, going through his rehab. Posted an update yesterday, same day that Myles Garrett did request that trade from the Cleveland Browns. Let's take this to a 49ers Q&A as we talk about Myles Garrett. We talk about Christian McCaffrey, the Renaissance man. Again, I can't get over the fact that I have been talking about the running back renaissance for the last 3 weeks. And as I'm talking about the running back renaissance over the past 3 weeks, we dig up Myles Garrett with an epic quote that basically foreshadowed that about Christian McCaffrey. Myles Garrett calls Christian McCaffrey the Renaissance man. Time to ask some good questions. Ready to answer all of your good questions. Is Garrett hinting he wants to play for the 49ers? No, well, I think that he wouldn't mind playing for the 49ers when he's narrowing it down to teams that are actual contenders when he posts what he did yesterday. The 49ers, I think, very clearly fall into that mix, even in a horrendously torturous down season. San Francisco was in the top half of the league in DVOA, was in all of their games. Not all of them, sorry. Misspoke there. Toward the end of the season, they weren't in some of the games, but when they got up for games, they were in them. I think anybody, with a brain around the league understands that the 49ers have firepower. And I think Myles Garrett understands that the 49ers have firepower. Now, I don't think he was specifically pointing to a certain team, but he was pointing to a contender when he was speaking. What would the 49ers have to trade for Garrett? Well, there have been a series of defenders over the course of the past several seasons who have commanded first-round picks. Why don't we take a look at some of the names and some of the prices? The 49ers even got a first-round pick in return for a defender. A lot of 49ers fans didn't like the trade, but they did get good value as far as draft capital went for DeForest Buckner. Now, it's possible that you can look at that Buckner example and use it as justification and reason to say, yes, the 49ers should absolutely trade for Myles Garrett if they so have the opportunity. Take a look at this. These are the NFL defenders who were traded for at least a first-round pick in recent years. Darrelle Revis in 2013, first-round pick. Khalil Mack in 2018, that's the one that I keep on bringing up. Khalil Mack went for a pair of first-round picks. Oakland received 2 first-round picks, a third-round pick, and a 6th-round pick for Mack, and then they sent back a player and I think a 5th-round pick. But the bottom line is that 2 ones came the Raiders' way for Khalil Mack. Frank Clark, first-round pick, 2019. Minka Fitzpatrick, that was to the Chiefs, by the way, from the Seattle Seahawks, Frank Clark. Minka Fitzpatrick in 2019, first-round pick. Jalen Ramsey, that was a big trade in 2019. DeForest Buckner, 49ers traded him away to the Colts for what, number 10 or a number 11 overall? Wasn't a bad deal as far as value goes, but I'm going to get back to why that deal could encourage the 49ers to go hard after Myles Garrett. Jamal Adams, that was one of the worst trades we've ever seen. That really hurt the Seattle Seahawks. Didn't they give up like 2 first-rounders for Jamal Adams, Mike? I remember Seattle played an absurd amount for Jamal Adams in 2020. That was not a good idea. And then Bradley Chubb, that was a first rounder and like a fourth rounder for Miami to pick up the edge rusher from Denver. The Jets sent Adams and a 2022 fourth round pick for the Seattle Seahawks, first round picks in 2021 and 2022, as well as a third round pick. Oh my goodness. Highway robbery. Anyway, out of all these trade prices, 49ers fans are most familiar with DeForest Buckner, heading to the Colts for a first round pick in the upper half of the first round in 2020. I thought that was good value for San Francisco. I think anybody will agree that it was actually good trade value. Now, where the 49ers went wrong, where they didn't pick up the slack of DeForest Buckner leaving, is they turned around and used that pick, what was number 11, on Javon Kinlaw, who was not as durable or as good as DeForest Buckner. So you might have gotten the value in the pick, but you didn't get the value in the selection later on, which underscores the fact that the NFL draft is a crapshoot and nothing is a sure thing in the NFL draft, which means if you have the number 11 overall pick and it will take that plus something else to send over to Cleveland for Myles Garrett, you have to realize that number 11 and whatever you send over there in terms of draft picks is not a sure thing. Myles Garrett is a sure thing. So in 2020, the 49ers gave up a sure thing in DeForest Buckner. They decided not to pay him, obviously. They gave up a sure thing in DeForest Buckner, and they got uncertainty in return. There definitely was value in that uncertainty, but because of the uncertainty, because of that range that it all could have hit, they ended up downgrading at defensive tackle. And you could operate on the flip side of that in this argument because Myles Garrett would unquestionably upgrade you at defensive end, would upgrade you as a football team. I mean, this is a NFL Defensive Player of the Year. He's the most recent player to have won that award. Now, the question is, at what price do you want to acquire that certainty? In the case of Christian McCaffrey, and this is how Myles Garrett and Christian McCaffrey tie together in yet another way, the 49ers traded with the Carolina Panthers for Christian McCaffrey, and they decided to send 4 picks Carolina's way. 4 picks. I mean, this was an extremely expensive trade. But what the 49ers told themselves was that Christian McCaffrey is a sure thing. And if he is a sure thing, then it's worth sending the hypothetical, the uncertain draft picks over to Carolina. I think a lot of teams, ever since the Rams successfully pushed all their chips into the middle of the table in 2021, remember when they traded for Von Miller that season? I think ever since the Rams did that with the whole all-in approach, I think they're realizing, hey, we can use these draft picks to get sure things. Now, even if you do get a really good player and he delivers for you, as happened with the Rams, there's still a drawback to sending the draft picks away, and that is the player that you acquire is going to be much more expensive than any players that you might draft. The cost-effective way of keeping a roster sustainable over the long term is the NFL draft, which is why those picks are valuable. But when you're a team like the 49ers now or a team like the Rams in 2021, the temptation to go out and get better for sure immediately, even if it costs more money, is very, very strong. And it worked out for the Rams. It hadn't worked out for other teams. The Rams are the famous example of it working. Everything is a risk. All investment is a risk. And this definitely is investment, potential investment that we're talking about. So anyway, back to your question, what would the actual price for Garrett be? I don't know. Maybe it will be 2 ones, or maybe it'll be a 1 and a mid-first rounder. When we look at the prices that I put up on the screen for some of the players that have been traded for first-round picks, it has ranged between 1 first-round pick and about 2 first-round picks, with other stuff thrown in there to make the deal a little bit more convoluted. The market seems to have changed over the past few years to where players aren't costing as much. In 2020, players were at an absolute premium. Now they aren't costing as much. but I don't know what the 2025 market in particular is going to be. So I'll give you a range between 1 first-round pick and 2 first-round picks. Might be somewhere in between those two extremes. What do people think? Do you think the 49ers should do this or not? If the opportunity presents itself. Oh, the 49ers traded back with the Bucks, Mike reminds me. So, yes, the 49ers picked. So they got number 13 for DeForest Buckner. It wasn't number 11. I misspoke there, but they have number 11 right now. So they had number 13 and from the Colts, and then they traded with the Bucks to go down to number 14 and pick Javon Kinlaw. I'm ordering myself a ride, guys. There we go. I have to go hit the town. But not yet. Not yet. I'll be with you until the ride comes. What's the backup plan for corner? That's a good question. Why don't we open up the roster? There it is. 49ers roster. Well, yeah, that's the depth chart. Look at this. It's pretty empty at corner. Lenore, Renardo Green, Delarrell Luter Jr. You better sign somebody if you're San Francisco. Because if you don't, well, you're going to be awfully bare bones at that position. They're going to go to the draft, I think, definitely to stock up on at least depth at this position. But before then, free agency is going to hit. And the free agency situation, I think, is going to be headlined by guys like Paulson Adebo and DJ Reed. Charvarius Ward today posted that he's going to be hungry for whoever he plays for next year. We already know that Charvarius Ward has talked about the PTSD that he suffers in the Bay Area because that's where his 23-month-old daughter, Amani Joy, passed away. I think everybody would totally get it if Charvarius Ward, even if the 49ers offered him quite a bit of money, did not sign with the 49ers. I think that would make a whole lot of sense. Somebody's pointed out, reminder that Demo was a 5th rounder. And you know who else was a 5th rounder? DJ Reed. Maybe the 49ers should try to bring him back this year. All right, we talked about Myles Garrett, who called Christian McCaffrey the Renaissance man. And Christian McCaffrey is running that running back renaissance, which is going to be on full display in the Super Bowl with Saquon Barkley. So go ahead and check out the article up on the San Francisco Standard. It is ready for you in the description. More trade intel on Myles Garrett coming up soon. Hopefully you got that whole financial thing. There's a lot of complicated stuff with the option and roster bonuses. March 17th and September 1st. Those are our 2 inflection points right now. We'll see you guys later.